welcome to another Well-Being Wednesday. I am Karen Keener of the Sovereign Mom, and I am here to uplift you, to bring you the resources that will help you improve your life and uplift yourself so that you will no longer settle for tyranny or usurpership or invasion of boundaries. Today, I have brought somebody to the well-being sphere that I've been familiar with for a very long time. Her name is Marinda Bowen, and she runs the Natural Law Apothecary. She's a master herbalist, I believe, and just a resource of knowledge in the sphere of well-being, and somebody that I go to and run to her shop to see all of her tinctures and potions and wonderful things. They also host classes. They have a massage center, a float tank. They have everything, and they're in the process of moving to a wonderful, I'm sure, new location. And so welcome, Marinda. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate this opportunity to share the magic of what we're doing here and love being able to reach the folks in your community.
So I kind of said who you are and what you do, but do you want to give some of your background, like your history? Because I know you were in the medical sphere before you were in the wild woman sphere.
So I suppose in the very beginning, I actually was in the herbal sphere. My mother raised me on these folk remedies. And so she has a very rich background growing up in Bryce Canyon, and her family, because of her mother's death when my mother was very young, her father was closely allied with Native Americans who were very kind to help bring in everything from corn flour to blankets. My mother remembers her rooms being lined with Native American art and blankets. And so I think that there was some love and care that was participated between the Native Americans where she grew up and her family. And so she did learn from both her family roots and from the Native culture that was there around her how to utilize certain remedies for different afflictions. And she raised us on those things. And I can remember teasing with my brother about our time to receive our medicines, our Swedish bitters, our cod liver oils, and squeaking and squalling about those. And now, of course, I share them with other people quite gleefully, masterfully, as you mentioned. And then as I chose my own profession in life, I actually became a registered nurse, the traditional baccalaureate background. I went to school back east. I loved my professors. I had an opportunity to begin at UVM, then finished up in New York, and that was a great experience. I had excellent professors, and they encouraged me to go after what I really loved, which was chemotherapy. And so I went straight into oncology, hematology, and chemotherapy, and was a chemo nurse for years. I loved that. There was a lot of fascinating medicine there. A lot of the things that I was administering to patients were poisonous, and these toxic or poisonous medicines came from plants very often. Vincristine, vinblastine are toxic morning glories from the Amazonian forest. There's the yew tree, and there are even poisonous mushrooms that we use in chemotherapeutics. So it wasn't really that far. It just was sort of a different branch of what my roots had brought me into. And then when we moved to Utah about 10 years ago, we couldn't find the things that we had gotten used to. We had been living in Vermont on 33 acres in the wilderness near the Canadian border for several years, and we had birthed our last child there in the forest, and that was a very beautiful and magical and touching experience, very tender to be amongst the trees in that, and very grateful for the things that we learned during our time there. And we wanted to bring that forward when we moved here to Utah. And so we opened up our own herb shop, and we began with offering things that were in alignment with my husband's practice, which was a very successful massage practice. So of course he was offering infused oils that were great for aches and pains and complemented his massage therapy. And then we started branching out into teas and different tools and bringing in more and more herbs gradually over time as we were able to expand our space at 619, which was a wonderful experience, going from 300 square feet to 3,000 square feet. And we brought in, yoga classes and our flow chamber and sound ceremonies, cacao ceremonies, hape ceremonies. It really was a very expansive and beautiful spirit experience at 619. And we are very grateful to have just moved down the street to 423 South. So we're still on 600 West, 423 South in downtown Salt Lake City. And just a whole space of ritual and magic and practice and ancient medicine from around the world.
You're for people that haven't been there, you're in this very industrial place, and it's next to the train tracks, and under the freeway, and it's like a little oasis in the midst of like the concrete jungle, because you have built up, you have bees outside, you have, I don't know if you still do, but you've grown, like you've taken the sidewalk garden to a whole new level, and it's like a forest in the middle of, like, I remember coming there at the beginning and it was like some herbs growing out front, and now it is just this magnificent forest in the middle of this place where you wouldn't expect it. So it's a real oasis. It's so wonderful and cool. I think
Thank
everybody that
you.
comes into your shop has that same, like, we can kind of see it behind you, and you have the books and all these little nooks and spaces created, so many little sacred spaces that are so cool. And then you're also a bit of a snake charmer too, so you've got all your little reptilian babies running around everywhere.
We do. Thank you for acknowledging our growth. I love that you remember seeing us when we were first starting those gardens. And that was a real labor of love. It took us quite a while to turn it into the jungle that it is now. That was probably the hardest thing to leave, right? Behind at 619. It's of course still there. I drive past it and I talk to all the plants. We grew about 200 medicinal plants right outside of there over those years. And it actually is very cool, about 10 degrees cooler once you walk into that oasis there from being around the hot sort of industrialness of the corner. And we will be growing that again at our new place. And we now have a beehive inside of our new place. So there's an observation hive where you can come and see inside behind the glass the bees working. And that is part of a partnership that we have with Peter, who does hives and honey. And he has been a partner of ours since we first came here. We were doing farm markets before we even had a brick and mortar with him. And then we also have an incredible art space now that's new at 423, where we have a beautiful addition of local artists imbuing our space with all the magic that they bring to the community. So it's a really special collaboration.
You know, it's interesting because you're going through this transition, but I think that there is obviously something happening that planetary, somewhat stimulated by a pandemic and a response to a virus and things that happened in the world. And so I think a lot of people are switching jobs right now, relocating, and having transitions in their lives. So I think what I'd like to ask you today, since you're going through that, and that you're talking about the leaving behind the garden that you worked so hard on, this massive undertaking that you completed and just fostered and nurtured and loved. Are there herbs and herbal formulas or different types of things that people can use to assist in transitions, in times of transition? And like, can you talk about that? Like what you're doing for yourself in that regard to support yourself through the transition?
Yes, I love that. What a fantastic question. So for me and my experience, what I have been pulling myself into are the adaptogens and those that offer auric nourishment, right? Because I understand that I have pulled so much into me over the years, distilling all that we've created in that space. And a lot of that is, of course, coming with me, inside of me, all the things that I generated. but the manifestations, some of those things are left behind. And so in order to nourish myself through that transition, some of my favorite adaptogen allies include rhodiola, schizandra berry, Jiaogulan, ginseng, of which there are many different types, and even eleuthero is sometimes called a ginseng as well. But there are a beautiful about a dozen adaptogens that I cycle through regularly, including things in Ayurveda, such as Tulsi, that bring me an incredible amount of strength and energy and ability to adapt to circumstances. And in fact, those plants are often known for that, to offer us that virtue. And so I am super grateful to have access to these things so readily. I do love to work with them in tea form. I have a tea every morning that works with things like wood betony and or things like shatavari and white peony. These have a white aspect to them. And the white is often our auric. You're even seeing me in white today, right? Like I'm understanding white being the color of transition in many cultures, because the body loses its color, the redness of the blood, and turns white. White is very often seen as that color of transformation, or that spectrum of light known as transformation. And so I work with things that are white, the white peony and the shatavari, to pull that in. Wood betony is incredible for the nervous system. It is a long time herb. Culpeper, famous herbalist, would say, sell your coat and buy wood betony, because it was one of the most valuable herbs used for everything from childbirth pain, toothache pain, and of course, there's so much transition. In fact, there's even a stage of labor called transition in childbirth. So I feel like that wood betony is a great ally during the transition for my nervous system. Jiaogulan has been an incredible ally for me, and I've been working with that one over the entire time that we knew this transition was coming. So we did know that we would be moving. We had our building that we have leased for 10 years purchased by developers. Just as you said, so much transition is happening. Our neighborhood is transitioning so much, buildings coming down, buildings going up. And so our building was slated for redevelopment, and we were grateful to be able to stay an extra year. When they put out the letter in June of 2022, we realized that we needed to solidify where our new place would be. We have such an important community that we serve. We did not want to skip a beat. And in fact, we didn't. We closed on Saturday night like we normally do. And we are closed on Sundays, and we moved completely our entire shop over on Sunday and reopened Monday at noon as we normally did. So we literally did not skip a beat.
So right now you're in the new space.
Right now we are in the new space. I can't wait for you to see it. You're going to love it.
I didn't even know, because you just, wow, because it looks like you've been there forever, and it looks like your old space. You like managed to like bring it all together in such a similar fashion, and oh, that's wonderful. And it's wonderful that all the things that you built out still fit in a new location that you were able to.
Yeah, there is a lot of the old here, but there is also great new potency. We have distilled our craft down to the most dedicated art that we do, and we are definitely bringing with us all our vibes, but it is a level up for sure. I'm super excited for you to come steep in it.
That's incredible. I'm so, but like you're really demonstrating how to transition in like the highest form of transitioning, that you were able to do all that so quickly, and so like clearly you've made it look easy. And I
Well,
definitely need to incorporate more of the white energy into I can see how that would affect change, bringing that white peonies. And peonies are also about drawing love into your life too, so that's what one of the other things that I know that particular flower symbolizes. So that's probably also helped along the way.
Yeah, the peony has an incredible, gorgeous bloom, right? And in a variety of colors. We do carry the pink peony flower in shop, and it makes a beautiful addition to teas, a pop of color, and still carries some of that nervine aspect. White peony has particularly been used for transitions of discomfort and pain. It's often applied in women's health for women who constantly transition with fibroids, right? Because they're constantly, that's being taken through that estrogen cycle and getting quite a bit of pain. The fibroids form in other areas of the body, right? That in the non-target tissue, and so that can be difficult and needs to be addressed. And so that white peony root is what I have been typically working with. So the root is quite a beautiful white sliced, picturesque looking hardy root, and I just crush that up and put that into my blend. And the other thing that I've been loving working with is gotu kola. So really, there's been a lot of physical labor in the move, but there's also mental labor, right? And that planning, that strategy that we needed in order to make this a smooth process, in order to continue to serve our community right up until the very end of our move, and then to immediately begin serving again within 48 hours, required some real mental focus. And there's an explosion of chaos, right, that occurs as everything is dismantled and taken off its shelf and put out of order deliberately. And
Yes.
then needing to reorder all of that in a new space that has a lot of the similar aspects as you can see and feel behind me, but also some very unique and different feels and different aspects. And the gotu kola has been an incredible ally to me, fortifying my mind and fortifying even into throughout the body. You may have read this already, but it is said that the elephants never forget because they eat gotu kola leaves. It's part of their diet.
I did not know that. That's so cool. And I just started taking gotu kola for my mental sharpness. I think, yeah, that was one of the ones you recommended at the time. I was using what's the other one that people recommend, but it was giving me migraines.
Oh, maybe the ginkgo, the one
was
that
the
was, yeah,
ginkgo.
because it increases the blood supply and can open the vasculature. And sometimes headaches are a result of open vasculature, right? Like we don't want them too open because that's stagnation energy, and we don't want them too closed because then circulation can't flow. So there's a very nice balance that we want to achieve. And as our bodies age, there is a natural gosh, I hate to use the word sagging, right? But it happens both on the outside and the inside of our bodies. And we want to be able to keep the areas of our vasculature that are feeding our minds and feeding our bodies in nourishing ways, our guts. We want to keep those areas tonified, and offering ourselves the different herbs that tone those parts of the body can be great allies to us as we go through any kind of stressful process. Even just our activities of daily living, can be stressful. Those who work in stressful environments, those who are engaged in conflict management, those who are in spaces where there are they're solving the problems of the world, right? There's a real need for us to be able to offer that kind of respite that supportive plant allies can offer us. And I really see these as relationships, right? Like I'm developing my relationship with wood betony, with white peony, with gotu kola. I'm discovering all the beautiful conscious virtues that they offer me in that relationship. And then I'm giving back into them, by sharing their virtues with others. This moment here, being able to share the virtues that these plant conscious entities offer into the world, and how accessible they can be by simply boiling water and offering ourselves a cup of daily tea.
Yeah, it's so easy. It's like, and it almost seems, because we've made medicine into this complex thing and all of this, but it can be as simple as having a cup of tea, and it's like, wait, it's that easy to support myself.
Thank you for affirming that. That really does need to be affirmed in the minds of the general community, because they come in and they feel so intimidated, like, oh, I don't know anything about this. I don't even know where to begin. But what did our ancestors do, right? But dream these things, that all their environment was imbued in their dreams. And they learned so much from simply talking to the environment around them, speaking to the waterfalls, and feeling what that waterfall felt and meant into their bodies, the cleansing aspect of that, right? And then they, as they would begin to nourish themselves and look around at the barks of trees and the flowers that were around them, they learned how to use these things. Even animals do. Many animals will chew certain plants that they know to be healing, and spit them onto wounds of their own or of their children. And so this is something that, as we begin to realize that these plants around us are conscious and can have a relationship in which they communicate and exchange with us, then we realize how uncomplicated it can be, just like making friends, right? Just like having allies, just like creating friendships and communities. As we begin to engage and discover what we can rely upon from these conscious entities and what we shouldn't try to rely upon them for, we can learn so much and uncomplicate the process of the beautiful relationships that we can have with plant medicine.
Yes. Yes.
And not to forget the reptiles, as you mentioned, there is even reptile medicine, there is arachnid medicine. Everything in consciousness is imbued with the primal source, the primal energy, and that through the elemental aspects offers us an incredible amount of characteristic virtues. So as I work with my snake, she teaches me strength through the slowest and most stillest movements, things that are so subtle, right? She teaches me to love subtlety, to revere subtlety, and also to understand the nature of strike, right? When I see her work so slowly and so patiently as she moves towards her nourishment. And then at a certain point, she realizes the necessity of moving in. That is what our move was, right? We worked with subtlety and slowness to the point where you hadn't even realized that we had moved, right? And then we struck, and then here we are.
Yeah.
And so I learned so much from them by spending time with them, by consciously engaging them, by offering exchange with them, right? Providing nourishment, and they nourished me. And we do carry quite a bit of animal medicine in the shop. And I think for some people that's very new, but actually that is so ancient. Animal medicine is extraordinarily ancient. And we have done a lot recently in the sphere of expanding the ideas around what these plants are, that they aren't just medicine, but that there's something so much more beyond that, that they are this incredible conscious relationship that we can have to broaden our connection to the world around us, and to realize that we are such a beautiful fluid part, that we are fully connected to this despite the illusion of disconnection.
What you're saying, it makes me wonder about right now, there's it's really hot in a lot of parts of the world, and especially in the United States, and a lot of people with pets, they want to shave them, and a lot of people are saying, oh, or I've been hearing and learning that you don't want to do that to pets. Like, they will naturally shed when they need to shed, and you don't need to shave them to cool them down. But are there plants and plant medicine that helps with pets to cool down in the summer and stuff like that? I mean, maybe this is a stupid question, I don't know.
No, this is fantastic. Yeah. And I do think that working from a place of intuition is one of the most vital offerings we can lean into for ourselves, because there are many different environments that we find ourselves in. And we do want to be able to shift or offer what needs to be done dependent upon the environment or the exposure that we may be having. And we also need to be very mindful of risk benefit analysis. It's almost like we've forgotten of our sovereignness in risk benefit analysis. And we just feel like we've got to turn to some expert. There's always some expert to tell us what to do with risk benefit analysis. And originally, this was fully inside us. We fully embodied our own risk management all the time, right? Because we were primally living in a state of exposure that was far greater than what we have now. You know,
Yes.
we have I walk into my apothecary and I've got lovely AC. You know, it's 100 degrees outside in this industrial neighborhood. The sun's just beating down on everything, right? And I have not only it's enclosed, so I'm not, you know, feeling the exhaust of the train outside. I've got filtrations in here, and my area is temperature controlled. But what if it wasn't, right? I would need to have an honest conversation with myself about the risk versus benefit of things. And so this is a perfect example. In areas where it is extraordinarily hot during the day, they release themselves from labors during the day, and sometimes they call it a siesta, right? And a culture like us in America that's like, we got to get out there and work all day, work 9 to 5. We're like, what, a siesta in the middle of the day? How lazy, right? And so our conditioning around us is causing us to behave in certain ways, and that conditioning we need to think twice about. Are Is that my instinct, or is that conditioning? So you ask this
That's
question, you know, people are shaving their pets, but then I'm learning over here that, you know, maybe that's not necessarily the correct thing to do. Maybe that's stressful to their bodies. Maybe they don't, maybe they're already creating certain cooling mechanisms in that hair that I'm unaware of, right? We really want to allow ourselves to sink into our primal instinctual patterns and thought processes, so that we are not having to rely upon conditioned thought processes that
yeah.
would take us away from our sovereign and instinctual actions and behaviors and thoughts. And so, of course, offering hydration on regular schedules is so important for our pets. I'm always very mindful of the fact that my snake and my tegu lizard and my tarantula are relying upon me to bring in that moisture to them, and learning about what they like, observing them, seeing them, how often they use their dish, making sure that that dish is replicated in what they would have in their environment, right? um, uh, the movement, having movement in that water. We have this beautiful moving stream. There's a water feature when you come in here, and having that movement of water, and having access for our creatures to have access to that water is an important aspect. And there are many different herbs that our animals will naturally go after. I loved watching my dog every summer that I brought her out with the 200 plants that were out there in front of our shop. She would go for one every single time, the comfrey. And it's so interesting because in the FDA acknowledgement, comfrey is often cited as a poison for animals. But then you go back and you look at old literature, and comfrey was actually used in agriculture as animal feed. And you have to ask yourself, well, wait a second. How come my old book says that this is agricultural feed and my new book says it's a poison for humankind? What is the disconnect here? Is there conditioned thought? How can I rely upon my instinct and work from a place of sovereignty? And you notice when you come into my shop, I don't just have new books on herbs. I have some very old books on herbs. And I feel like having an opportunity for that sort of exposure, so that people can see a timeline and understand that there are dynamics around us that we are are not necessarily privy to, unless we educate ourselves by diving into timeline spaces, getting these little time capsules of what's there, so that we understand how the story changes over time.
Yeah. The narratives can be steered and keep us uh, from our intuition, because I too have looked into comfrey. I'm a that is one herb that just, I guess the energy of it draws me to it, and considering using it internally was like, that's what I must need. And somehow I knew it intuitively. And then you go online, and it's like, don't do that. The internet will tell you, no, 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 but your intuition's saying, but I'm pretty sure. And I tend, like your dog, to run very hot. So Like the dog outside in summer. I run hot all the time. And so that is one of those herbs that I am drawn to as well. So that's fascinating to learn the more historical context of this herb. Very fascinating.
And another thing is we can always change how we apply certain herbs so that they fit our level of comfort, because maybe some people really are very concerned. They may have a family history in which certain aspects of a plant are toxic, right? I have people come in all the time and they'll say, my friends, they're all doing the CBD and they're getting sleep and they're not anxious, but I tried it and I was crawling the walls. And you have to honor your internal compass. This is so important. It's going to point you to the things that are important for you. And many times when people come in and they're like, wow, I really need to cool down, I'll encourage certain flower baths. If they're like,
Right.
oh, I'm not a tea drinker, well, let's do a flower bath. Lemon balm, hibiscus, these are all often used to cool the body internally. But if you don't want to take things internally, then there are many ways to engage these as an external way. And taking a beautiful bath with rose and lavender and nasturtium can be a peony, can be a beautiful way to engage these things. And even turning your hot tea into cold tea, right? Because people will
Mhm.
say, oh, I don't like, to drink tea in the summertime. Well, how about making a sun tea? How about pouring it over ice? There are certainly ways to adapt. And obviously, we would probably be working in these ways intuitively and, until things were complicated. Just like you, to pull it back to your mention of medicine, is feels so complicated, right? That we always have to run to an expert. But we can so often just simply listen to our internal compass and realize that our awareness of our body is one of the most incredible tools that we can offer ourselves.
Yeah, it's great that you brought up the bath because I was just thinking, I guess you could also put the comfrey in the bath, which I did. In fact, we purchased comfrey from you initially to my kids had chicken pox and I was looking up different herbs to help with that. And we just took a old sock and stuffed it with chamomile and um comfrey, and I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff that we put. Was it chickweed maybe?
Sure, yeah, could have been chickweed, self-heal, lemon balm, all long-time herbals used against herpetic infections.
Yeah, and I just and some oatmeal and just tied the sock with all the herbs in it and put it in the bathtub with the kids. And they were little and they just laid in the bath with the herbs and played with the sock and rubbed the sock and the in the bathtub and watched some of the herbs come out of it and watched the bath tea come out of it, and they stayed in the bath for like way longer than you can normally get kids to stay in a bath, just laying there and feeling all the herbs on their skin, and they healed very quickly and they had no scars or anything from their chicken pox, and they had the funnest time. I'll remember that as like one of the best memories. Kids playing with herbs in the bathtub. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's wonderful in order to get them introduced early, right? So that they have the same kind of confidence that I have. I think for a long time I took for granted that my mother had accustomed me to so many of these things when I was a child. And so that even when I went into allopathic medicine as a registered nurse in some of kind of the deepest, darkest area in chemotherapeutics, I still had such a great confidence of using these products over my lifespan. I mean, by the time I was a teenager, I was making my own teas, right? Because it was just obvious to me. When she would give me these things when I was little, I'd have a cough or a cold or a flu, I would feel better. When she would put something on a mosquito bite, it would feel better, right?
yes.
So I didn't even need to try to trust these things. I knew
Yeah.
my body was aware that these things worked, and I sought them out myself. And I think that that can be such a great way to help children understand how natural and resourceful their environment is, instead of seeing it as a place that will never survive, right? I think sometimes people, they are afraid to use the herb. They think, oh, was that even sustainable? Should I even be using that herb? But the earth is an incredible resource. She is an incredibly resourced herself, and she will definitely outlive us. You know what I mean? Like, she is incredibly resourceful. She has so many places she will pull from. And that doesn't mean that we should take her for granted. In fact, we should, of course, be making an exchange. Just like I was saying, there's an exchange. There's an exchange between me and the hawthorn berry on my shelf. And so if I'm going to exchange at that level, of course, I'm going to exchange at the higher level. What you saw us grow down there to turn cement blocks into an incredible oasis. That was an incredible exchange for us, to be able to create that space there to honor aspects of renourishing what we were receiving.
Yes, definitely. Speaking of wildlife, speaking of wildlife, and transitions, I've been talking about menopause a lot lately because I'm going through that transition, and a lot of people have been responding to my different various posts on the transition, and many of the things that you're talking about initially with adaptogenic herbs and things that help you with a physical relocation or a job transition, and you mentioned women's health. Those are all similar in going through the transition of menopause, because menopause is almost like becoming a whole different person. Life is on completely different terms.
Yeah,
It
I
is
think
a
it's so important to acknowledge that there these cycles. There's a death, right? When we engage fall, there is a death of summer. When we are in our youthful feminine, right? We are glowing and abundant, and we are producing. It is like that edge of the very end of spring. So like June, July is, there's so much. I mean, there's apricots falling off the trees right now. We'll be going into apples. So there's this beautiful, abundant producing time of the year. And we have that same thing in our body. And our, as women, a lot of our potential is look toward the moon, right? They'll look toward the moon as having these phases. And there can be seen typically, the 3 phases of the moon, but many people will imbue a 4th phase, that there is this mastery time for women before they enter into sort of the very restful time of old age. So there is our youth, right? It's almost like the end of winter, springy time. And then there is our maiden phase, where we are able to produce these beautiful children, engage our lovers, and have such a beautiful time of moving through that abundant spring into summertime. And then the fall is like as we begin to enter our later childbearing into perimenopause years. And then winter, of course, being fairly symbolic of menopause, when we no longer produce, we no longer offer seed, right? We go into that very restful phase. And so understanding that there could be this beautiful mastery, this queen phase in between the maiden crone, right? A lot of you'll hear maiden and then crone, but I think there's been quite an infusion of queen energy in the last, maybe 10 to 20 years, where a lot of women have been feeling that space of calling them into greater intellectual production rather than producing from their root chakra. So understanding that we're going to need to simply allow nourishment in the root space, with a greater focus on speaking our truth. So we're raising up in the chakras where our power is coming out, and to our aura, because we're going to be sharing a ton from everything that we've learned
right,
during those other phases, right? And
right.
so honoring herbs that resonate with that process, just like you asked about herbs that resonate with the process of the hotter months, or herbs that resonate with transition. There are herbs that resonate with menopause, things like wild yam, vitex, dong quai, white peony, raspberry, maca, and the list could go on and on and on. No one woman is the same. We all look different, and our cycles look different. And so making sure that we step into our care protocols with inner wisdom, and moving away from the things that don't seem to serve us and honoring and bringing in the things that do, then we can have a smoother transition than one that is unsupported, right? So very important time to support the body when going through a transition. As I mentioned, it's like a death, and we need to release our hold on old patterns, and we need to allow new patterns to emerge, and that can be very scary, right?
Yes.
We don't too often have a full amount of faith in our bodies because we're so used to asking the experts, but allowing the faith to stay inside of us, and working from spaces of intuition, which women so naturally have so much of. It is a beautiful place to nourish ourselves from, and a very important witness to self-witness.
Yeah, I'm because I'm in it for sure. Um, one of the things that I am finally understanding, I guess, because through perimenopause, there was things that didn't work for me for a long time that I tolerated, that I learned to let go of, that were not working for me all along. But it was like, now I can no longer even handle them at all. And then now in menopause, it's the things that really worked for me before that no longer work for me. And we're looking at our bodies and saying older or old, but in fact, it's almost like you have a whole new body, you have a whole new chemical system, everything's running on a different paradigm entirely. And so really this is a new body, and it's almost like you have to honor it like you just got a brand new car and you take care of it really well and everything. And I feel like after menopause, or it's definitely like having a new, it's, we want it, it's hard because it's counterintuitive. You want to think of it as the old, and you want to go back to the old ways and the things that worked for you before, and those don't necessarily work anymore. It's just like, this is a new car, and I have to, it's like when you get a new phone and you're like, how do I work this thing? I'm gonna reprogram it, what am I gonna do? And like, it's a
and that
new.
is and that is such an important process, right, to honor that it's not something that is simply achieved overnight, that you do have to work through a process of honoring all the things that were working for you before, and realizing that this is going to be new territory that you have never experienced before, and that there is a learning curve with that, and that in places of shift, things around you are moving all the time. So what worked for you yesterday may not work for you today, and that there will be new engagements and new opportunities, along with new challenges that will present themselves as you move through a new energetic phase. And that acceptance is so key, right? Just knowing that that cycles are so much a part of our life, right? We see them everywhere. And of course, one of the main things that has happened in about the last 3,000 years is the lack of honoring of cyclical time, is this strict movement to linear time, right? Everything on a timeline.
Yes.
Um, and that dishonoring of cyclical time is not in alignment with us, because we are such pure cyclical beings. And it's made it hard for us to embrace birth. It's made it difficult for our very young maidens to embrace their womanhood, to embrace menarche.
Mm-hmm.
It's made it so that circumcision, the cutting of a infant's genitals, is the norm without anybody even thinking about what that might mean.
Right.
And it's made it so that we don't even think that men would have a cycle. Of course they do. Somehow they're like alien beings that don't have a cycle. There's no. Women have a cycle, men have a cycle, plants have a cycle, animals have a cycle, right? My snake is shedding every single month. My
Yes.
reptiles, they're demonstrating cycles. The seasons are demonstrating cycles, and that dishonoring of cyclical time and that forced linear time, it makes all of us feel out of alignment. And we need to find spaces of alignment. And that's why nature is so nourishing to us, right? You step out in nature and you feel so much nourishment. Even if you don't know what nature is and you're not a hiker, you can feel the nourishment because it witnesses you. So when you step into nature, you are witnessed as a primal cyclical being from the most ancient source technology. And you realize that all of that around you, that beautiful ecosystem, is a witness to your primal nature. And that just like you can connect with it, it can connect with you because you are from the same language, the original language of nature and mankind and all of the animals, the plants kingdom, the animal kingdom, the mineral kingdom. And that's why people love, like stones and the gems, and they come in, and even if they don't know anything about quartz or rhodochrosite or chrysoprase, they're picking these things up and like, wow, this is amazing. This is beautiful. It feels good to me. I want to take this home with me, right? And it's because there's that primal frequency that moves through all conscious matter, and it witnesses us, and we feel that witness, even though we may not be able to articulate that.
It's bless you for saying all of that. It feels good to feel seen, and not just, and especially during menopause, because as you explained so eloquently, there's this time of like production and fruitfulness, and then in menopause it's kind of slowing down. But when you go into nature and, like you explain, you're witnessed, you're seen for being rather than doing, creating, getting something done by a deadline. And I even related to what you were saying about earlier about summer, being a hot time and people taking siestas is a natural thing. And I am naturally, in the summer, I get really tired, and I just am like, I want to work at night. I want to work in the dark, in the morning hours and stuff. And it feels like, well, no, you're supposed to sleep when it's dark and work when it's light and da da da, you know what I mean? And there's this kind of like, I think even, I appreciate the idea of circadian rhythm and stuff, but there is also a time when it's just too hot to follow the circadian rhythm. And my body goes, okay, let's work at night when it's cooler and sleep during the day. Like, and I should listen to it instead of all
Yes.
the experts that say, oh, don't do that, and we have to follow, like you said, our own intuition. Everything you're saying is such a like blessing to hear, I have to
Well,
say.
thank you so much. This has been a pleasure to spend this time with you. So thank you for letting us share our practices and our wisdom and our space and the things that we love and are passionate about. We are super grateful to be able to get those out into communities. And I'm so grateful to you for allowing us to share with yours.
Absolutely. And I hope people come in and visit you. Also, do you ship?
Yes, we do. We ship door to door. So anywhere around the country when you want certain items. And of course, they can go to our website, and we have like a direct shippable ordering online process there. And that's just naturallawApothecary.com. They're also welcome to text orders into us. And when they go to our website, naturallawApothecary.com, we have all our information on there for contact. And we have a fun Instagram page for people who want to see live and in action what's happening there. And we do share those posts to Facebook as well. And we're just Natural Law Apothecary on both those spaces. And we even have a little TikTok. We are not super savvy at the TikTok, but we post a few things there to keep people engaged. And we love doing videos of the creatures and the animated space. We love just getting people in here. So if they're locals, we would love them to come to us. We're just right downtown by the Yellow Cab building, 423 South on 600 West, still across from the train tracks, still in a pretty wild industrial area, but definitely a little oasis when you come inside. And we'll be building out the landscaping outdoors as we get the trenches in and get the rocks in and get the soil down and putting up so many of the beautiful plants that we love. And we have more beehives here than we had at the other place. So it is really happening with all the fuzzy little creatures, and we're supporting them and have a beautiful honey process here where people can come in and get raw honey from around the Wasatch. I think that's really exciting. And to see a lot of local artists. We have probably 50 micro businesses that are supported through us, places that people that don't have anything but working out of their own home or a table somewhere. So we have a very robust micro business community that is supported through us. So we'd love people to come in and support their local community.
Excellent. So I have two more questions for you, I guess. One is, do you have any upcoming courses?
Yeah, we have a small education space here. Knowledge has always been very important to us, the dissemination of that knowledge. So we will be getting a beautiful class lineup for fall. It seems like people's schedules seem to be much better, September through November. And so we'll do a lovely, robust fall schedule for classes. On the basics, people always seem to need the basics of using herbs, working with herbs. And then we like to do a men's health and a women's health, just to kind of put that out there for people needing particular support in either of those spheres. And then I always try to do at least one or two classes that have to do with our more eclectic creations or procurements that we get from around the world. Certain incense requires, some information. I think you attended an incense class last year.
I did. It was so fun. I brought like the whole gang of my women's circle, and oh my gosh, that was the best.
Yeah, so, and it kind of requires a little bit more. People don't know too much about incense. They've heard about it. They've read about frankincense, maybe in the Bible and myrrh, but they love to know how to apply these things. So those classes are a great opportunity for us, and we'll be sharing. And to learn about those classes, we will share them on the website, but some of the best places to find our classes is on our social media pages, or they're welcome to call the shop. If they don't do social media, we're always happy to have them just reach out to the shop.
And then the last thing I wanted to say, I guess it's not really a question, is just that if you're not from Utah, but you're visiting Utah, I honestly just want to say that there are things to see in Salt Lake, and this is one of them. That you should definitely, it's like it should be a tourist destination. It should be like everybody goes to the temple, but I think you have your own little cathedral there that people are really missing out on, that's like a million times better and has so much knowledge and everything to offer there, that I hope that people that are visiting from out of town look in and find you, because I think they would be overwhelmed and overjoyed to find it. Like everyone that I brought in for the incense class was like, oh my gosh.
I love that. The Cathedral of Natural Medicine. I'm going to have to use that. That is fantastic. Thank you for that analogy. We had a cute customer who had been coming to the old place and came into the new place here, and they brought their family and they were running around. We said, this is better than the Children's Museum. So we definitely love being a destination, a place for people to just come and enjoy the environment and learn and just love their community through this process of supporting people that are making magic and creating things all the time and bringing in magic from around the world. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share that.
Well, thank you for being here and sharing all of your wisdom with us. And it has been just another fantastic Well-Being Wednesday. And I'm so glad Marinda was here. Thank you, Marinda. Thank you, Natural Law Apothecary, for all your wisdom and all that you do.
Thank you, Karen. We'll look forward to seeing people in the shop.
All right. And all of you at home, have a wonderful week. Bye.